right, headed to the shop for part 12 of the Zephyr V12 build. Hi, I'm Barry. Welcome to my channel. I appreciate you coming along. I expect JB is going to give us a little more detail, maybe get a little more technical on how they do the body work. This is very much, this part of the project is body work, and there's sticklers over there, JB and his crew, about maximum steel, minimal any other products to recreate a beautiful car with as much of the authentic steel body present as possible. So how they do that and what they go through to achieve the results is very interesting to me, and I welcome you coming along. Okay, so where are we at now in the process of this?
We're getting ready to locate some of the finer lows and highs on the door, and what Balthazar is doing is he's using his hand to locate the highs and lows, so he gets an image of where the highs are, where the lows are, and is making an imprint of that. Okay, so he's discovered this is high right in here, so he's going to take a fairly coarse sandpaper and use the dual action sander. You notice he never goes up and down only, he's going at a bias to the center line of the door. Okay. Okay, because that way you only cut the highs. If you go back and forth, you just cut a flat spot.
Right.
Okay. Now he's going to transition to a hand block. When he gets closer to where he wants to go, then he switches to a hand block. Again, notice he's going at a bias. He's not going straight up and down or straight back and forth. And that's how you keep on the crown of the door, and the highs go down, and then when you get to the lows, it becomes even with respect to everything else. That's why you go back and forth, because that now the good is acting as a guide to remove the bad. And as he gets closer and closer, you notice that he exaggerates the bias to the center line. Okay, so he's getting pretty close. He can actually feel it by virtue of giving it a feeling through the sander. When you hit a high, you can distinctly feel a high. And when those start disappearing, there's more of an evenness. If you notice right here, you got a little low right here. Okay?
Right.
And that's starting to pop up. Now he'll try to sand it out, but only to a point, because at some point he's going to use a spot putty to get rid of a low spot. You don't want to sand everything down to get rid of one little low. But he's going to try and bring the whole thing down. So that's why the big, broad, sweeping strokes. You're using a very coarse sandpaper, probably an 80 grit. Now you use the hand towel to magnify the problems that are there. So you got a visual reference by virtue of these little lows here, which are actually, you can see that they can either be highs or lows depending. And right. The hand is the one that tells you where the really fine lows and highs are located, so he knows what to do with his next step. It's a series of steps. Okay. Now you can have a low in the middle of a high, so visually it can be misleading. You can have a bump with a little dip in it. So that's why you sweep the whole thing. It's like radar. You're going back and forth, you're looking for differences, even minute differences. Okay, now again, the dual action sander is for rough cutting, and then when you get closer to your goal, you transition to hand. And if you notice that the angle is becoming more severe, because the panel is now getting better, and we're not trying to cut down little mountains in the middle of valleys. We're trying to bring the whole thing down to one level. That's why the strokes have to get bigger.
Wow.
See how he sweeps the whole door?
Yeah.
He's looking for highs relative to lows.
Very close.
Now you can also vary the pressure on the block, but in no case do you want to use fine sandpaper. You want to cut it quickly and move quickly. The way you bring everything in together is you don't sit there and work in one little spot.
Right. I'm noticing how big and broad the sweep.
Exactly. And as you get closer and closer, the strokes get longer and longer, because you're trying to bring all the entire door down with a constant gradient with respect to the door itself. The factories weren't particularly good about creating really smooth bodies. That wasn't their job. Their job was just make them, paint them, and ship them.
This is why a lot of time restored cars are actually done to a higher level.
They're almost always better than the original.
Right.
The original wasn't very good. The paint was
They
crude.
didn't take the time like this.
No, they couldn't. They couldn't possibly take the time.
Stamping it, welding
Stamp it, ship it, paint it, get it out of here.
Right.
And there were better stampings,
Sure.
but there was no real attention to detail with respect to body finishing.
Right.
All they were doing is bringing the panels together with lead, and then they put some filler in it, and they were really good at it. And they were starting with really good metal.
Right.
You know, we're dealing with a situation where the metal is actually in worse shape because of damage, age, rust, and all the things that impacted over 80 years.
Yeah, and it's not freshly stamped,
Right.
obviously. So.
No, it isn't. And the goal is much higher than it was when the car was brand new.
Yep.
Because the expectation, especially on a car like this, is the paint is virtually flawless. That takes a lot of work. It's a big car, and it takes a lot of talent and a lot of time to accomplish that. Okay, over here we have a door that is very, very close to being finished, okay? This is where that door is going to go next, and he'll put another coat on the whole thing of a filler primer to build up a new line that's very, very accurate. It's very much parallel to where he wants to be, but it leaves him enough room to be able to sand it. So the guide coat is just a fog coat of black lacquer. You can see it here and here and here and here, and that gives him a visual reference so that when he's cutting it, he'll see the lows because they're still black. So he doesn't overcut it. If you start guide coating and cutting, you know where you're going to go. If you don't use guide coating, you have no idea where you're going. The best guy in the world is going to spend way more time if they don't guide coat the panel, especially toward the end. It's a very effective technique. It's very inexpensive. You can buy black lacquer, you just fog it on. You can't put on too much. You can put on too little, but this one's getting really close, so he doesn't really need that much. And he knows where the lows are, so he's going to hit it here, here, and here, because he knows there's probably some lows in there. So he now can, when he's sanding this, he'll see that black disappear. And he knows he's getting closer to what we call the line. 3 days is 24 hours. That's a lot of time. And
it's a lot of time spent on a door.
And it's a lot of money. But it's the thing that everybody looks at. The hood, the doors.
You can't avoid a door when you deal with a car, so it's going to be right there.
Exactly. And then the door has to flow in to the back of the front fender and the front of the rear quarter.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure these doors, you can't just finish them and then put them on the car, because everything has to flow from front to rear. So the back of the car that we see over here is going to dovetail into the front of the door. So this alignment has to be excellent. Okay, it has to be even, and it has to be, one of them can't be terribly proud of the other one.
Right.
Now in some cases, because the door opens inboard and it's very close, you're going to have an offset here.
Right.
There's no physical way that we can have these two panels exactly aligned if this door has to tuck inside of the back of the front of the car.
Right.
So we're going to have this just a little bit out to make sure that they don't bang into each other when the door is open and closed.
Right.
Because if you notice, when the door is open, okay,
yeah,
it either goes away okay? Or it comes back and gets very close.
When it's shut, it's got to just line up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can't do that off the car. No. There's no way to know.
No, you have to get it close. And
you have to get it close, and then you put the whole car back together again, and now you start dovetailing all the various pieces one to the other.
Right.
Now the 38 that we're working on, if you noticed in the very beginning, the alignments of the hood, the alignments of the fender with respect to the front catwalk was actually pretty good, but it's not good enough.
Right.
So we're going to have to do some work to bring those things together. There needs to be a flow to the car, and when you see a panel that's shifted over to one side or badly out of alignment, or this is giant and that's tiny, it immediately grabs your eye and says something's wrong here.
Yep.
And a dark colored car is extremely difficult to finish because everything is right there in front of you. You can't hide anything. When it gets out in the sun, the highlights make it very difficult to hide any kind of a problem whatsoever. So there's a different standard on a dark car than there is on a light car.
Right.
The only car that's worse is one like a silver metallic. Silver metallic is really difficult to do because you have all of these different ways that the light plays on it. You've got this reflective background, and so it's the hardest color to paint. There's no question about it. Red and black are child's play compared to silver.
Yeah.
It has to be absolutely flawless. All the flake has to be shot in a particular way such that none of the flake is at odds with the adjacent area. It's really challenging to do, and it's one of the things that I almost hate to do.
Right.
You can just about count on painting a car twice when it's silver.
Wow.
Before you get what you need. The Cobra is silver,
yeah.
and we painted it 3 times to get it right.
Yeah.
So this one's been painted twice. The first time was not adequate. It wasn't good enough, so we took it all apart and blew it apart and had to sand it all down and reshoot it and build it back up again.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of steps involved, but this is where it all starts, right over here.
Yeah.
If this is bad, this can't fix it. Paint cannot fix bad bodywork. It absolutely has to be done by somebody who really knows what they're doing. He's been doing it 30 years, okay? And the difference between him and some other body people is, A, he really knows where he's going, he knows how to get there, and he knows how to get there quickly.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, let's go look at the primer on the rest of the body.
Okay, let's go. You can actually see the direction of the coarse sandpaper we used.
And changes
going
direction.
Crosshatch.
Right.
To create a round instead of a flat, which is what happens if you go just up and down or back and forth. You have to always be going at a diagonal to a curve in order to bring it down evenly.
Yeah, because you're not dealing with a perfectly flat piece anyway. So
well, in order for it to be sanded and come down in a curve, you can't use a flat object to create a curved object.
Right, right.
Just makes
it makes sense
if you think about it.
Yeah.
So you have to keep moving across the curve and skipping over the top to take down the highs, and then you create a new line, and then you start sanding it again. Yeah. And when you get to the end, there'll be very little in the way of sanding.
Excellent. It's coming along.
Yeah, it really is. We got the floor has already been sanded and sandblasted and primered with that's a red oxide, which is a primer that'll last forever. It doesn't give it up like gray primer does. So we like to use it where we're not going to be doing any further work.
Right.
Because it protects the metal, and as you can see, the floor is in a really nice shape.
It's strong.
Now. Here's the pins that we were talking about.
Okay, right.
All right, and these pins are welded to a low spot, and then they have a hammer that pulls it out. And it just pulls the metal out to a certain point, and then you stop, and then you just grind them off. And you see here where he's pulled it out. Instead of just putting a huge amount of filler in here, he wants to get it out back to the rule. We're trying to get down to where the filler is limited to only an 1/8 of an inch.
Right.
An 1/8 of an inch of
minimal
filler.
amount of filler.
Well, an 1/8 of an inch is very stable.
Okay.
As long as 2 things. You got good adhesion, the metal is prepped properly, that it's white metal, and it's got a place to bond properly, not trying to bond it to primer or old paint. Okay. Bondo does not bond to anything but metal.
Okay.
Okay, and it's a sophisticated material as long as you don't put it on incorrectly.
Right.
The other thing to remember is that there are all kinds of grades of Bondo. And if Bondo is, what I do is I go down to the store, I say, give me the good stuff.
Yeah.
It can be fairly expensive, but in a car like this, why would you want to save $20 on Bondo?
Right.
I mean, that's just stupid.
Right.
So you get a very high quality, and it can be $40 or $50 a gallon. Cheap stuff is 20 or 30. That's how you can tell.
Right.
And it's, the Bondo is nothing but polyester resin and talcum powder and some flexible additives and cobalt so that it gels quickly. Okay, you can start to see the beautiful 38 emblem is starting to get kind of stand up.
You're starting to see where it's going here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By taking it down to white metal, we get all the rust out of it. We got all the paint and residue and that sort of thing. So we start with a nice fresh metal.
Yeah.
And the sandblasting process is really a great way to save time and labor.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody's going to sit here for hours and hours and sand up there. That sandblast will remove that in minutes. It could take an hour to do it by hand.
Right.
So we want to start out with a white metal body, and then we're going to start making the repair as required.
Perfect.
Spend a lot of time trying to make them super smooth because no one's ever going to see them again. This is the way the factory did them.
Yeah.
In some cases they would put undercoat on them, and we still have some undercoat in small places, but it's a very sophisticated material and it's protecting the metal, and we're not going to go in and spend days and days to get undercoating off that's doing its job.
Yeah. It's still working.
It's still working and still doing exactly what it needs to do, which is to protect the metal from moisture.
Right. Very good.
We're going to start fitting the deck lid with respect to the rest of the body. There's no two deck lids the same, and the factory didn't do a very good job of matching everything. So we're going to have to fit this deck lid in the context of where it ends up being on the car, and we're going to take it to a much higher standard than the factory would, because they would just bolt it on, and if it fit, well, fine. If it didn't, well, oh well. No, there were some good people, don't get me wrong, but they didn't have time to spend a lot of time on every car.
Right.
And we're going to have to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 times as long finishing as they did.
Okay.
Just because the standard is so much higher today, and especially a car of this importance. Because this is one of the most beautiful cars ever built. Nobody would argue that.
Hey, thanks for watching. I will continue to bring you updates as I can and as they occur on this Zephyr build project and other things going on in the car world here. Please subscribe if you're so inclined, and I appreciate you watching. I really do. Thanks.